Welcome back to another episode of Development Dive, where we're diving deep into the development of Galactic Cruise. I am TK King.
I'm Koltin Thompson, and we're in for a doozy today.
Yes, so we run Kins and Key Games, and as of making this video, we're planning to publish, crowdfund our game Galactic Cruise. And we are kind of walking back through the different versions of the game. And so if this is the first video you stumbled upon, we've got a few videos before this that start at version 1. Now we're at version 12. We're not doing a video per version, just kind of hitting big changes as we go along. And so if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe. We'd love to have you join us on this journey as we continue. But like Colton said, this is a doozy. And Colton, why don't you tell us why it's such a doozy?
It's such a doozy because this is where we introduce the bumping mechanic. And you'll also notice that every player has one worker. So we're not going to name drop what game we were playing around this time. But if you have a guess and want to, drop a comment or something, telling us what game you think we were playing. We have this idea that everyone would have one worker, and
you could get kicked out.
You could get a kicked out bonus when you got kicked out.
Yep. It's so interesting. I know you said this before in a previous video, but it's just so interesting to see how much other games influence, like what we're playing, influence our designs. Like, it's just crazy.
Yes. And it makes you wonder, what games inspired those games. Because this happens to everybody.
What you're playing, what you're thinking about, it's fresh on your mind. You want to try things you like in other games and try to implement them in different ways in your games. Yep, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you can also say that we took a pretty sharp turn from wordiness to icons, for better or for worse. They are, we went pretty icon heavy. If you want to maybe talk about how turns functioned in this game, because as you see, there are no cue cards, there's no staff meeting.
Is there?
No, so I think it was just. Do we have a player aid? Does anyone know how to play this game? Cool.
Yes, I get.
I'm kind of thinking maybe. I think maybe you took. You took turns.
Well, there could be phases, right? Because you had one worker. This may be the first phaseless version of the game.
But you gained income for sure, because that's what these little things were. So was it like everyone places a worker, you take income?
That is a fantastic question. Yeah, because there's no income on these. Okay, well, we'll cycle back. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is this up here, what we call nowadays the network. Whether or not it was called that during this version of the game, I'm not sure. But this came about just as I was thinking about worker placement in our game, and just how it's very boring and standard. I wanted to do something different. And of course we were playing the game we won't mention that has different locations with 2 actions each, and you get kicked out. And I thought of this system called the network, and I'll show you a picture. Actually, I drew it on my notebook paper and sent it to Colton, and I even signed it and put a date on it, because there was just something in me that knew this was I could sell this piece of paper for $1 million one day. No, that's not the reason. The reason is like I just knew this was going to change the game. Like I had a feeling that this was something that was super unique and different and was really going to change the game. And I just wanted a really clear record of when the idea kind of came about and what day it was. And so I'll show it to you here. This is the drawing that I drew, Koltin. And as you can see, you've got squares with asterisks in them, and those represent spots for developments. And so in previous versions of the game, as you saw, your developments were placed above each worker placement spot. But now my idea was you could place them in between locations, and by doing so, you could have access to different actions with the same worker by building basically network connections in between them. And so all the numbers represented the locations. So in this version, there's 8 locations, and I had different spots for developments. And as you can see, there's one at the very top, one at the very bottom that we didn't implement just because it didn't work out with the layout that I made when I made this board, so I just kind of ignored that. But everything else is very similar. You've got 4 locations across the top, 4 locations across the bottom, and developments across the top, bottom, and in between. And so yeah, so we'll jump back to the board here, and you can see kind of that the result of that, right? We've got 8 locations, each spot you can place a worker. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Colton, but in this version of the game, whenever you placed your worker, let's see, the first player, I believe, got to place these, right? And choose which
Yes.
side, right? Because they were double-sided. You could either 2 oxygen, a shuttle segment, 2 food, an agenda card, 2 fuel, and an increase on the tech track. And so the first player got to choose where these went and which side they went on. And then whenever you place your worker, let me get a couple here. Whenever you placed your worker, if it got bumped, you would basically get the bonus the arrow pointing at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the worker came back to you, if I'm not mistaken, and this got discarded. So then on your next turn, you would place your worker back out. Now, if you didn't get bumped and it was your turn, in this version of the game, you had to go to a different column and row than where you went, right? So if my worker was here, my options would be here, here, and here, right?
Right.
Which
Yes.
made trying to figure out what you want to do quite a headache. So yeah, so I've talked quite a lot about the network here. What do you have any thoughts about the network, or if not, maybe you can start diving into some actions?
No, I don't think so. I'm still here trying to figure out how our rounds worked. Like if you just took actions and then
Maybe
took income.
maybe it
I'm
was
not
until
sure.
all 3 of these were gone.
That might have been it, actually. That's very
That's
possible.
about the only thing I can think of.
But yeah, the network definitely was a game changer as far as, especially with that column and row business where like you could, because otherwise this player could not take an action here and on their next turn take an action over here. But if they had this,
like if they had this here,
they had this
they can move
development.
here and then take.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because did you get 2 actions? Is that?
I'm pretty sure, but it was very restrictive in this version of the game, at least for a while.
Oh, and
Like you,
it had to be top to bottom if you wanted to do both, or if you were doing like an action, if you were using a development, your first action had to be at your location, and then your second action could be at the other location.
It's quite restrictive. It's just we.
None of that
It's just
existed.
not. Yeah, because it was like to some degree, I was trying to create that tension of like, like a lot of good worker placement games do. They block you, they restrict your options, and just what you were trying to accomplish in this game, it just made it so difficult that it wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we can dive into some actions here. So of course, first up here is development. This top action is an interesting one. It was pay $2 million to move a development, because we thought at one point or another moving a development would be helpful, but I don't think players really ever used it.
I don't think so either.
Next one here was building a development, and I believe this said pay a certain amount of money or resource from the development row to build a development. And building a development icon is a development with a
Mm-hmm.
light bulb.
A little light bulb, yeah.
But then if you come down here to technology, you also kind of have the development thing, right? Because this top action let you move up on the technology track. Now, I was like, there are two over here, but one is for your points, I believe, because now we have a point track.
Yeah. We have a VP track
and so you
now.
can move up on the tech track as before. I think this is probably very similar to what we had in previous games, though I do know we had a tech row of these 3 cards.
Yes.
But it still functions very similar, right? Like the bottom action here lets you either increase on the tech track twice or invent a technology, which was building a development, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you were paying the cost listed over here, right? Like 3, 5, 7, 10, which I think has been the same for a while. And then you place your development on it, and then you could pay what's in the bottom right to the player who owned it to use it if you were at that level's top or higher. So I think that's very similar.
Very similar.
And then we move over to the next column here. We've got procedure. It's crazy. I totally forgot we had a location called procedure. This top one lets you take a shuttle segments. I think the shuttle segments were blue. So it lets you take one from the face-up row. So, yeah, so we've got 5 down here.
There's still the black on white from
one thing that's different though, and we still have rooms in here. Interesting. I do believe this version of the game is our first prototype, right? I think this exact version.
Is it this exact version? No, because I know it's similar. I think the version we have, you at least have like more workers, and I think there's maybe.
Right. And I do think you have pictures in your shuttle segments.
Yes, and I think like some of this is different.
I do know what's different here is there's a cost of resources on some of these.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which was awful. Like I think we played with it a time or two, and we're just like, this is terrible.
It's too much. Yeah.
But that action lets you take one from the row, and then you could also take the bottom action to draw one from the top of the deck. Is that right? Which just seems odd. Because it was such a random.
That's what I was assuming.
But I think that's what it was, and I don't know why. Because I
think so too.
We're continuing on down to agenda. Bottom action, you could draw an agenda card. Now, currently, we have one that lets you draw 2 agenda cards. That lets you draw 1 agenda card. And I think they actually started to look... Nope, they're still white. At some point, they start to look like Twilight Imperium cards. But not yet.
Yep.
Bottom lets you draw 1. And the top lets you discard any number to draw back up that many. So I think this is a way to like cycle through ones you didn't like to get different ones.
Which is odd because I can always find a use for an agenda card. I feel like, I guess unless you're searching for one.
Well, at this point, some of them are probably terrible. May use another player's development to take 1 adjacent action. I mean, that's pretty nice. May select any die from the bag set at any number placed in your shuttle. Yeah, so some of them were pretty good. Here we go up to the sales department. This first one lets you schedule a flight. Okay, so I think this is very different, right? So in this version of the game, instead of having the flight cards in your hand, we transition to them being on the board.
We did. It's our first public flight.
Public, yep. And so.
And in this version, all these were created equal. All these wings. So it's like when you schedule that, you just took one and
just told you that it came from this third flight. But they do have silver side, which we'll get into. But yeah, so this just lets you schedule a flight. And so what that meant was, yep, as noted on the bottom of the card, you must satisfy at least one criteria. And so whenever you schedule a flight, you would take the corresponding token here and place it over by your shuttle. Now, I do believe this is the version of the game where you took... Oh, we've renamed the launch pad to launch pad instead of a hangar. But I think in this version, I think this is where you take this token and place it up here on the duration.
That does sound right.
And these you just kept, right? Or maybe you put it here.
Maybe you did.
And then if
it shows it would fit there.
If you didn't launch at the end of the round, it turned silver.
Yes, because at the end of the game, you score for gold flight.
That's right. So like if you scheduled it but then didn't launch it, you were penalized for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was scheduling. And then the next action lets you take 2 dice and place them on your segment. So dice, I think at this point in time, still function exactly the same, right? 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks,
exactly
colors, rooms,
yep.
all the same. And then storage. Now it's...
this is another big one. It's changed some since all began, but
this is something that's like stuck around for a long time, and just very, very lightly changed, right? Because the storage location, the top action is discard an agenda card, and then raise the resource that's on the agenda card up. So you had to match the agenda card to the resource, which we thought was thematic and cool, but it's just so difficult that it just wasn't fun. And you gain them.
I mean, it's cool. It's cool enough where I would even say like, I would maybe even throw like an advanced variant in the back of our rule book, like if you want to play that way, like. But we required it from everyone in this version.
And then the bottom was take 2 resources or 3 if it's full.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken,
which confused everybody.
You had to take the same resource, right? Because if you're taking 3 if it's full, that's only looking at 1.
Yeah.
So you just took either fuel, you took oxygen.
It was always,
and if it was full, you could take 3. So, but
yes, it was all very much like only increase what's listed. You can take exactly 1 resource, either 2 of it or
still very restricted. Like a lot of
very
rules about what you can and can't do. Anyway, we skipped assembly down here. So assembly had a lot of stuff going on here. The bottom was you could build segments. You could build as much as you wanted in this version. Oh, you remember this?
Oh, yeah. I'd forgotten about it.
I had to until I flipped it over. So the top action lets you move segments to different shuttles. So you could move from one shuttle to another. Or you could do something with segments in your garage. So if you look at your player boards,
maybe, but it was like, you could put stuff in or take things out?
Yeah, so the player boards had like a garage area here, and this is where segments went. The reason that we had this was because of the launch pad. Remember? Because if you had one launch pad and you launched a shuttle, and then you started building another shuttle, and that other shuttle returned, there was nowhere for it to go. So we had to have like a garage, or what we called a hangar, I believe, for all of the pieces to go. So then whenever you had another launch pad, you could open it back up. Which again is like a cool thematic thing, but like it just was really clunky, right? And so, yeah, you can move stuff in or out of your garage by taking that action, I believe. And then the final one was the market. This let you exchange money and resources, all at a 1-to-1 ratio. So I think this was a big jump from our previous version of the game, right? Because previously it was like food, and then oxygen was worth more, and then fuel was worth more the most. This version really switched to like it's all treated equal, right? Money and resources.
Well, and at least in this version, it was the just freely back and forth. So what ended up happening is people were able to basically trade one resource for money, and then trade that money for a different resource. People were just trading resources on their board. So we did have to...
Yeah, at one point it goes to where you can only go one direction, right? And then the bottom one, which is interesting, because we've actually integrated this. So like we're in version 87 right now. This action came back into the game like 3 versions ago.
Something like that,
Not as like an action, but as like the ability to do something.
A thing you can do.
So we won't dive into what that does. But in this version of the game, this action lets you build a segment directly from here. You just choose one of these, pay the cost that's on it, and put it directly into a shuttle. So save you the time to draw it and then build it. So that was a network. Basically, you were building developments to give you more action selection between the locations. And other than that, we talked about the flight cards, storage. I think player boards, launching, development cost. I think everything pretty much stayed the same though.
Yeah. 2 per guest for food though. So
I think that was our attempt to try to make food more important, right? Because we got rid of the food drive, so we had to make food important.
Yes. And we made oxygen 1 per shuttle segment. So I don't know if that was including cockpits and engines or not.
That's a good question. Because at some point I think we started calling them cockpits and engines, and the other ones shuttle segments. Right, I'm not sure.
Yes, I could see it being either way, just depending on if we were trying to make all 3 resources like as equal as possible. It's hard to say.
And then VP for launching, I think is the same as last version, right? Stars, perfect matches, sum of dice, length of flight criteria. Yep. And then final scoring, highest on tech track, developments built per row, secret goal, money, most gold. We took out several things, right? Because there was 10. There was 10.
We did
in some of the last versions.
Now, I'm almost certain that it ramps back up in one of these versions. Because at one point it was all the way like across the bottom of the main board.
Yeah, it was.
You do gaining points, losing points.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
That's another visual for another day. But
yeah, I think secret goals are looking exactly the same as they did in the previous version. Just different back. Let's see. What are these? Oh, these are. Yeah, so income was interesting, right? Because as your points increased, your income increased. Very basic. Yeah. Granted, we don't know when it happened.
Yes. And it was really funky because we had to make it this.
Yeah.
70
yeah, so
thing.
Your income was 7, 8 plus 7, so it was like 15 or 22. Right, that way it cycled, because here it was 14. Once you go back over here, it was no longer 8 again. It was 7 plus 8.
I mean, your points were 70 plus whatever. Yeah, glad that we Hopefully, in the next version or two, just have a 0 through
Yeah, yeah.
99, whatever we got going on here.
It's 1 to 69. So everybody actually starts with 1 point in this version of the game.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What were we thinking?
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, that is a big jump in the life of Galactic Cruise. Introducing the network. Now, obviously, it gets a lot better, a lot more interesting, a lot more player interactive. But that is the birth of the network and the public flight cards. So.
Yep, and from there it just keeps branching out to be what we have today.
That it does.
So
yeah, so thanks again for joining in and watching. We hope you've enjoyed the journey so far. Again, feel free to like, comment, subscribe if you want to continue to see the videos as we post them. And if you're watching this after most or all of them come out, we hope you enjoy the rest of the videos. And enjoy the game if you've got it, or if you plan to get it. So we'll see you in the next video.
see you next time.